there are reasons for thinking this. There's all sorts of, this is just one example, but there are all sorts of midrashim where Moshe, when he gets the Torah, he basically just goes up to Sinai, grabs the Torah from the heavens, from the angels who don't really want it from him, and they take it down. And Hashem, in this midrash, this Agadah, has a, that's it. Yeah, he fights to get it. When Moses ascended on high, the ministering angel spoke before the blessed Holy One, sovereign of the universe. What business is one born of woman among us? Again, sorry. He has come to receive the Torah, answered God, and they want to hold it back from him. He wins. He brings it back down to earth. The Chumash just is the same as the Torah Kadmon in terms at least of its content. Okay, but there are real problems with the Pentateuchal theory. The first is theological fatalism. Okay, theological fatalism is the idea that for religious reasons, because of our religious commitments, we can't imagine how it is that human beings can be free. So one obvious manifestation of theological fatalism is that if God knows the future, how can it be that you're free? And the fear is that the Pentateuchal theory exacerbates theological fatalism. Because if the entire biography of Avraham Avinu and Sarah Neinu was already written 974 generations before the creation of the world, then there was nothing they could do differently because it was already written. And what's more, you might say, oh, well, that's not a huge problem because it's a problem we've basically already got, and we need to solve that one anyway. Yes, but you might think it's even worse because now God seems to get tied in. Right? There's a really cool midrash where the angels remind God to give Sarah a baby. And the angels say to God, look, it says in the Torah you're going to give her a baby, so you have to give her a baby because you don't want the Torah not to be true. And it's as if the midrash is aware that somehow the existence of the text of the Pentateuch, predating the world, even ties God in ways that are at least theologically uncomfortable. So it's the first problem, theological fatalism. The second, would you cough subtly when I've got like 5 minutes left? Good. 10. Okay, I've got 10 minutes left, okay. I can do this. Okay, another problem is divine morality. Okay, so take for instance the parts of the Bible that you're really uncomfortable with ethically. The canonical example that the rabbis in the Talmud speak about is the captive woman. So in wartime, you capture some humans, and the soldiers seem to have certain conjugal rights over the captive women, and the rabbis were appalled by this. They clearly didn't like this, and they engaged in some sort of apologetic. And the apologetic was something like this: in wartime, terrible things happen. Soldiers engaged in warfare are completely off the leash, and they engage in rape. And there's no way that God saying don't rape is going to stop someone who's about to raping, because they know they shouldn't do it anyway, and they're going to do it. But maybe if we have a law that says, look, you can have sexual gratification from this woman, but you have to do it in this delayed and restrained way, in a way that makes her a wife, in a way that gives her civil rights into Israel proper afterwards. They say it's still horrible, but it's the Torah making a compromise with the evil of man. Now, a lot of people in this room are not going to be satisfied with that apologetic, and I understand that. But even that is closed off to you if you think that the Torah Kadmon is lexically identical to the Pentateuch, because if the Torah Kadmon was somehow bigger than the Pentateuch, then it could include this phrase: because of the evils of man, in certain times in history, it's okay to have these rights, but of course this is just contingent on X, Y, and Z. If the Torah Kadmon was bigger, then maybe it has that kind of hypothetical framing for this law. But if the Torah Kadmon is identical to the Chumash, then the Torah Kadmon isn't big enough, and you can't engage even in that apologetic. I'll really hurry up now. These are easy. Textual implausibility. Even most of the Rishonim were aware that there has been slight evolution and deviation of the Pentateuchal text. You've got Ibn Ezra, who seems to be happy with at least some verses being added afterwards. And then you get this really weird question, right? Is the Pentateuch becoming ever closer to the Torah Kadmon, or is it getting ever further away? It's implausible to say there's an identity, because that seems to write into the Pentateuchal text a stability that even most of the Rishonim didn't think that the Pentateuchal text has. Scientific implausibility. Okay, so in the introduction to the Chumash of the Ramban, I spoke about this in the Shul Suda Shlishit. The Ramban says that, well, God looked into the Torah Kadmon to create the world. The Torah Kadmon is God's wisdom. It's the wisdom with which he created the world. So it must be that every item of knowledge you could need in order to create a world must be in it. Nuclear physics, we spoke about the Higgs boson, it all needs to be there. And the Ramban says it is all there, somehow encoded into the crowns and the combinations of the letters. And most people would say, no, it's just not there, right? It's there in God's wisdom, but it's not really there encoded in the Pentateuch. And I don't think that's necessarily a heretical thing to say. There's this thing I want to call the Azulai heresy, because I got it from Abraham Azulai. I'll finish with this slide and just try and summarise what I really want to say. The wisdom and esoteric knowledge in the Torah are infinite. It's impossible they should all be passed on to a human being who is finite. To think that the entirety of God's wisdom could be contained in like ink on parchment, that's heretical. So that might lead you, basically, to a theory in which you think that the content of the Torah Kadmon is somehow wider than the content of the Pentateuch. I call that the Pentateuchal plus theory. And unfortunately, there are a number of problems with that theory. Another way you can go, which I get from Ishbitz and Rav Tzadok Cohen, is the idea that the Torah Kadmon is this infinite paradigm that the Pentateuch and the oral Torah aim towards, gesticulate towards. It's like a paradigm. They don't even contain, they somehow gesticulate towards. And the basic, I can send people a draft of my paper if anyone's interested. The basic thesis of the paper is that there are actually really uncomfortable, from an Orthodox point of view, corollaries to any of the accounts you give of the Torah Kadmon. Either you say it doesn't exist, but all of our texts seem to talk about it existing, and then you've got this huge hermeneutical program. Well, what were they really talking about? And that's a problem. Saying that it's identical to the Pentateuch is a problem. Saying that it's broader than the Pentateuch is a problem. Saying that the Pentateuch just gesticulates towards the Torah Kadmon might lead you into all sorts of heresies, because it seems like you inject far too much human frailty into the Pentateuch. If the Pentateuch is just a human product, somehow gesticulating towards the divine. But there are views like that. Even it seems the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, that Moshe Rabbeinu, and you see this in the Rashbam very clearly in his commentary in his early comments to Bereshit, that Moshe played a role in clothing the content of his Sinai prophecies into words. Right? But that's dangerous to say, because as soon as you introduce human frailty, it's dangerous for the edifice of orthodoxy. Okay? It's not dangerous if you're not orthodox. It can be dangerous for the halakhic edifice. So the project I've been doing is a problematic, which is if you want to do systematic Jewish theology, you're going to have to give an account of the Torah Kadmon. I don't yet have one, but I can see that it's going to be a problem almost however you try to proceed. And that's it.
Thank you, Sam.